Rosalía Delgado, a former military field medic bearing visible scars, works as a waitress in a small diner in South Carolina. One day, a group of arrogant businessmen mock her appearance, but her calm, dignified response, and the support of local veterans shifts the atmosphere. Soon, hundreds of Marines she once saved begin arriving to thank her, transforming the diner into a place of memory and honor. Through their gratitude, Rosalía rediscovers her purpose in the quiet strength she never lost. Welcome to my channel. You ever been to the kind of place where time just seems to slow down? Where the linoleum's worn smooth from boots and sneakers and the ceiling fans spin more for show than actual cooling? That was Granger's Diner, just off the Tulane Highway near Redwood, South Carolina. Population, not enough to fill the high school gym. I started working the morning shift there about 5 years ago, after the dust from my old life finally settled. Name's Rosa Delgado. I was 34 then, but some mornings I felt like I carried twice that in my bones. Every day, I'd unlock the front door at 5 o'clock sharp, tie on my apron, same one I'd had since my first day, and start the coffee before the roosters in town had time to crow. Folks didn't come to Granger's for the view. They came because their eggs were never cold, the coffee pot never empty, and the biscuits tasted like someone still believed in things like patience and butter. I kept to myself mostly. Not because I didn't like people, truth is, I used to love being around them. But life has a way of turning the volume down on you after enough hard knocks. I wore long sleeves even in the summer, and not because I was modest. It was the scars. One ran like a lightning bolt from just above my temple, down past my jaw, and disappeared under my collar. Another wrapped its way down my right arm like a winding river. They weren't the kind that faded. They told stories most people weren't ready to hear. The regulars, truckers, factory workers, the older couples who sipped coffee for 3 hours and left a tip like it was $1,985, they didn't ask. They'd glance once, then go back to their toast. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers, car crash, or meth fire, or poor thing, probably PTSD or something. I never corrected them. Let them have their theories. I wasn't about to spill my truth for the price of a $7 meatloaf special. Then came that Tuesday. Started like most. Quiet hum of the fridge, a bit of country music from the radio in the back, the smell of bacon just starting to crisp on the flat top. Then in walked 3 men, all button-downs and cufflinks, ties already loosened like they'd earned a break from something hard. Probably management types from the city, passing through to wherever folks with corner offices and zero calluses go. They picked the corner booth, the one under the window where the sun hit hardest come morning. I brought over the menus, offered them a smile, tight, but genuine, and started pouring coffee. The biggest guy, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, barrel-chested and red-faced like a bulldog, looked up and froze when he saw me. Then he sneered. "You really think you should be serving people with a face like that?" he said. The spoon in my pocket suddenly felt heavy. I heard forks drop from another table. The cook, Carl, stopped mid-order in the kitchen. Even the jukebox seemed to pause. "Wouldn't dishwashing be more appropriate?" he added, raising his voice just enough to make sure everyone heard. "Or are y'all running a haunted house in here?" I didn't flinch. Just refilled his cup like he was anyone else. My hands were steady. Years of field work will teach you that. My voice was soft, but it cut through that silence like a bayonet. "I've served men like you before," I said, "but in places where the dirt was red and the bullets real." He blinked, taken aback. One of his buddies chuckled, like maybe he thought it was a joke. But something in my tone made the laughter die in his throat. "You were in the military?" the first one asked, his tone disbelieving. "Looking like that?" His words stung more than they should have. Not because they were original, but because they were familiar. Because I'd heard them in one form or another since I got back. "No one asked for your opinion," came a voice from the counter. It was old Mr. Parks, retired Army, wore his Korean War vet cap like it was church attire. "But if you need something to chew on, try some damn humility." The big guy didn't say another word. Not then. I went back to my shift. Refilled cups. Cleared plates. Didn't smile much, but didn't stop moving either. Eleanor, the owner, met me near the pie case. "You all right, Rosie?" she asked, brushing a thumb across her flour-stained apron. "I'm fine," I said. "They've got loud mouths and empty heads. I've seen worse." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on my arm. "You want me to take their order instead?" I shook my head. "They don't get that from me." She gave my shoulder a squeeze. "Just say the word, sweetheart." I didn't say it. I just picked up the coffee pot again and kept moving. At the next booth, an old man in a Marine cap was watching. He nodded at me, just once, quiet, respectful. He left a 20 on a $10 check. Didn't say a word, but his eyes said plenty. And that's the thing. You never know who's watching or remembering. That day was far from over. The rest of that Tuesday dragged like a bad limp. The city boys finished their breakfast, still murmuring to each other like they were the smartest folks in the room, but they didn't crack another joke. Not out loud. By the time they left, I had a knot in my stomach and a growing urge to retreat to the walk-in freezer and just breathe in the silence of cold air and boxed produce. But there wasn't time. Orders kept coming. Midway through the lunch lull, 4 young Marines came in. You could always spot him, even in civilian clothes. It's the posture, the buzz cuts, the way they glance at exits like they're mapping routes without even thinking about it. I used to do the same thing. Still do, sometimes. They took a booth near the window, and I greeted them with a smile, one of the real ones. I didn't know them, but I knew them, if you get what I mean. Young, cocky, hungry. The kind of guys who joke too loud but would bleed for each other in a heartbeat. "Coffee, miss?" one of them asked, grinning as he handed me 4 mugs from the center of the table. His eyes darted toward my scars, but only for a second. No pity. Just curiosity, maybe recognition. I filled their cups, slipped a little extra bacon on their plates when the orders came out. No charge. Just something I did now and then when I saw the boots walk through the door. They stayed maybe an hour. When they got up to leave, they were still chuckling about something dumb. One of them had dropped hot sauce on his lap and was trying to play it cool. But one of them, a kid with sandy hair and a quiet demeanor, lingered behind. He waited until the others had gone outside and then leaned back toward the table. He didn't say anything, just placed a folded napkin under his cup and walked out without a glance back. I didn't see the note right away. I was clearing their plates when I spotted it, neatly folded, like it had been handled with care. I opened it with one hand, the other still holding a syrup bottle. Inside, printed in square block letters, were the words, "Thank you for saving our captain. I recognized you from the photo he keeps. PFC O'Connor, B Company." My throat tightened. I read the line again, slower this time. The photo. I hadn't thought about that picture in years. There was one, snapped by a corpsman just after the mortar hit our FB near Ramadi. You could barely see me in it, covered in ash and blood, crouched beside a stretcher, wrapping gauze around a leg while chaos burned in the background. I never saw a copy. Didn't even know it made its way into circulation. But I knew who the captain was. And I remember dragging his broken body behind a concrete barrier with fire in my lungs and shrapnel in my side. I folded the napkin, tucked it into my apron pocket, and didn't say a word to anyone. Some days, that's how you survive. Quietly. The next morning, I arrived at the diner 15 minutes earlier than usual. I'd barely gotten the lights on when I noticed them. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a construction crew starting early across the street. But no. There, standing in a long, disciplined line, were people. Dozens of them. Men. Women. All ages, some in jeans and sweatshirts, others in sharp dress blues or old combat jackets. Most held something in their hands, small bundles wrapped in cloth or velvet or crumpled paper. They stretched down the block, quiet and orderly, like they were lining up for something sacred. I stood there behind the glass, heart thudding against my ribs, not quite understanding what I was looking at. At exactly 6 a.m., I flipped the open sign to face the world. The first man through the door was tall, silver-haired, with the sunburned skin of someone who'd spent years in a desert sun. His boots were scuffed but clean. He walked with the confidence of someone who had once been feared and followed. He sat at the counter, looked at me. "Black coffee," he said. Then, quieter, with a smile that wasn't quite a smile, "You don't remember me, do you, Delgado?" I froze. Then it hit me. "Captain Shaw," I said, almost whispering. "Major now," he replied. "But not for much longer. Retirement papers are in. Figured I ought to make one last visit to pay off a debt." He slid a green-wrapped package onto the counter, his fingers lingering a second too long. "I was told you were here," he said. "After all these years." I stared at the cloth bundle. And then he said it. "Ramadi. You pulled me out of a burning transport and stayed conscious long enough to stop my bleeding before medevac showed. That explosion that got your arm happened after you dragged my sorry carcass out." I felt my breath catch. My scars seemed to ache all over again, like ghosts remembering their wounds. "I don't remember much," I said, voice flat. "Just the taste of dust and blood. The sound of blades. Pain." He nodded. "You shouldn't remember. That's our job, to remember it for you." He tapped the cloth package. "This is just the beginning. The others, they're coming. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Outside, the line stretched even longer now. The Marines were coming home. And for the first time in years, they were looking for me. By 6:30, the booths were full and the counter had no empty stools. Eleanor arrived 15 minutes late, her usual, and found me already behind the counter, pouring second rounds of coffee like I hadn't just been gut-punched by a ghost from a past I thought I'd buried. She stepped inside and froze. "Rosie," she said slowly, eyeing the full house. "You throw a parade and forget to tell me?" I just shook my head. "They're not here for pie," I said. She looked around, then noticed the line out front. Her face changed. "Those Marines," she whispered. "Yeah." A man in his 60s, scarred down one cheek, walking with a stiff limp, approached the counter, a small drawstring pouch in hand. He didn't order anything. Just handed me the pouch and said, "You saved my radio guy." 3 days later, he saved my son in Helmand. "Thought you should have this." Inside was a challenge coin from his old unit, minted in '05. On the edge was a phrase etched in tiny lettering, and the worst of it, someone stayed. Next came a woman in her 40s, tall and straight-backed, with a patch over one eye and a presence that made the air shift. "I never met you," she said, "but you pulled my brother from a truck fire. He didn't talk for months after the war, but he kept a photo of you by his bed until the day he passed." She placed a silver locket on the counter. "He said your hands were the last thing he remembered, that they didn't shake, even when everything else was falling apart." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. The knot in my chest was growing tighter with each visitor. Around 8 o'clock, the cook from the truck stop down the highway came in and stood near the back. Said nothing. Just left a folded American flag on the counter and nodded. I'd patched him up once at a gas station. Never knew he even recognized me. Word travels fast in small towns. By mid-morning, local news vans had started showing up. Folks with microphones and bright jackets waited near the sidewalk, whispering into cameras. The line never stopped growing. Each person who came and ordered something simple, black coffee, toast, a biscuit, and left behind something that carried weight. Medals, dog tags, letters. One guy handed me a folded piece of camouflage fabric, frayed at the edges. "That was from my flak jacket," he said. "I was hit during a night op near Fallujah. You kept pressure on the wound while we waited for evac. Told jokes to keep me awake. I figured, you should have this more than me." I started recognizing some of their faces. Men I'd treated on the field. Women I'd trained with. A sergeant whose broken ribs I'd wrapped with a torn MRE bag because we were out of supplies. A lieutenant I hadn't seen since he was a fresh-faced kid shaking in his boots before his first patrol. And then there was a young man with a prosthetic leg. Mid-20s maybe. Wavy hair. Eyes too old for his age. "You probably don't remember me," he said. "Tourniquet, lower right thigh. You had me laughing while you wrapped it. Said I'd be better looking with one leg anyway." I smiled. Sounds like something I'd say. He laughed, then pulled out a photograph. It was worn around the edges, but I recognized it instantly. It was that photo again, me, blood-soaked and hunched over a Marine, fire behind me. My hands blurred in motion, tying a bandage around his leg. The expression on my face. God, I barely recognized her. That woman had steel in her bones. She didn't even look tired. He looked at the picture, then back at me. I kept this. Still do. Because I figured if you could stay calm in that, I had no excuse not to try. He left the photo with me. That's when I had to step out back. The alley behind Granger's smelled like fryer oil and old coffee grounds, but the cool air helped. I leaned against the brick wall, trying to keep my knees from giving out. I'd carried all those memories alone for so long, it never occurred to me that anyone had carried me in theirs. Eleanor came out after a minute. She didn't say anything. Just handed me a cup of sweet tea and rubbed my back in slow circles, like she used to do with her grandkids when they got nightmares. "You okay?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I said. "I didn't do anything special." Eleanor chuckled, rough and warm. "Honey, maybe not to you, but sometimes surviving with your soul intact is the miracle. And you," she tapped the side of my head, "you got more soul left than most folks ever start with." I took a deep breath, went back in. The diner was still full. Still quiet, in that reverent way people get when they're standing near something sacred. Near noon, a reporter asked to interview me. I shook my head. "I didn't do it for the headlines," I said. "I just wanted to know they made it home." He nodded and didn't push. That's when I saw her. A girl, couldn't have been more than 19, in uniform, leaning against the counter like she wasn't sure whether she belonged. She had a nervous look, like someone waiting to be called out for being in the wrong place. I walked over and poured her coffee. "You look like you got a question," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. How'd you get past the fear? When everything was falling apart around you?" I paused. "I never tried to be fearless," I said. "That's a myth. I just did the job anyway. There's a difference between being brave and being fearless." She nodded slowly, like that meant something to her. And maybe it did, because I saw a familiar fire in her eyes, the kind that says, "I'll keep going, even when it hurts." Just like I once did. That afternoon, the story had traveled farther than anyone expected. It started with a single photo, snapped by a trucker who stopped in for eggs and hash and left with something more memorable than cholesterol. He'd posted it online with a caption that simply read, "She served with scars, they returned with gratitude." That image of me, standing behind the counter, surrounded by a half-dozen Marines handing over medals and challenge coins, took off like dry grass catching flame. First it hit the local vet forums, then military groups. By the time I was refilling ketchup bottles at 2:30, the diner's phone was ringing with requests for interviews, podcasts, even a morning show in New York. Eleanor unplugged the landline. "I'll be damned if I'm letting a bunch of camera crews turn this place into a circus," she muttered. Still, it didn't stop people from coming. Veterans arrived in pickup trucks with tags from Virginia, Georgia, Alabama. Some in wheelchairs, some with canes, some just with stories. A man in desert camo, probably late 50s, came in holding a sealed letter. He placed it on the counter, and his hands shook as he spoke. "This is from my son," he said, eyes wet. He didn't make it back, but he told me about a woman who kept him alive long enough to call home. Said she had scars down her arm like lightning. Said she smiled anyway. He paused. "That was you, wasn't it?" I looked down, nodded. He slid the letter toward me. "I figured he'd want you to have this." I didn't open it then. I couldn't. Just tucked it into my pocket and pressed my hand over it like it might slip away if I let go. By 4 o'clock, there wasn't an empty seat in the diner or the sidewalk outside. People started leaving tokens behind. Name patches, photos, letters. We cleared a shelf near the pie case and started lining them up. It looked like a miniature museum of service and sacrifice. At one point, I caught sight of the businessman from the day before. Yeah, him. He was standing outside on the sidewalk, sunglasses low on his nose, holding a phone like it might shield him from the weight of his own guilt. I watched him for a minute, then turned back to the grill. Eleanor didn't. She went outside, had a few words, and came back shaking her head. "He wants to apologize," she said. "Let him want," I replied, flipping a burger. A couple hours later, just before the dinner crowd hit, someone knocked softly on the swinging door to the kitchen. I turned, half expecting another stranger with a folded letter. It was Captain Shaw Major, I reminded myself. He held something under his arm, wrapped in a flag-patterned bandana. When he unwrapped it, I felt my knees weaken. It was the unit medallion from Bravo Company. I hadn't seen one in years. And this one had my name engraved into the back. "We wanted to give this to you back in 2011, he said. "But you disappeared after the med evac. No one knew where you'd gone." "I didn't disappear," I said. "I just got small. Some of us have to." He nodded. "I get it. But we never stopped looking." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters, some short, some pages long. Every Marine you saved. Or who knows someone you saved. Letters from wives. From sons. From fellow medics. "We wanted you to know what you did mattered." I ran my fingers over the pages. The handwriting was uneven, raw, real. And it wasn't just words. They were pieces of lives. Echoes of those burning days and dusty nights. Pages stained by time and ink, but still breathing. "Captain," Major Shaw stood quiet for a moment, then added, "One more thing. There's a ceremony Saturday at the VFW Hall. Just a small thing. If you're up for it." I looked at him. "I don't do speeches." "You don't have to," he said. "You just have to show up." I didn't give an answer right away, but something in me stirred. That night, as I closed up the diner, the windows still fogged from a day's worth of people and emotion, I pulled out the letter from the fallen Marine's father. It was sealed with wax. Inside, the handwriting was young, the kind that still curled loops on every "why." "If I don't make it home, tell her thank you." She taught me what courage looks like, and I didn't even get her name. All I know is, when everything went dark, she lit a match and said, "We don't quit here." So I didn't. I made it long enough to call home. That's enough. I set the letter down. Took a shaky breath. The lights buzzed overhead. Outside, the last of the Marines were drifting off into dusk. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, took a long look at the crowd thinning under the amber streetlight. And for the first time since Fallujah, I whispered out loud, I was there. I mattered. The wind didn't answer, but the silence did. Saturday came faster than I expected. I hadn't planned on going. Even when I told myself I might, even after Major Shah handed me the notebook, something in me pulled back. It's hard to explain. When you've spent years hiding from your story, stepping into a room where it's the only thing people see, well, it feels a little like standing naked in a storm. But that morning, I found myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing out my hair for the first time in years instead of yanking it into a tight ponytail. I wore a black dress I hadn't touched since my cousin's funeral and left my sleeves rolled up. The scars were there, of course. Pale, ridged, honest. For once, I didn't cover them. Didn't try to. That woman in the mirror? She looked like someone who'd survived fire and carried something more permanent than pain, purpose. I arrived early to the VFW hall. Didn't plan on walking in early, but the parking lot was already full. I saw dress blues, camo jackets, even a few sharp suits standing beside wheelchairs. Families too, wives, kids, a few folks with tears already in their eyes and nothing even started yet. When I opened the door, the hum of quiet conversation stopped. And then they stood. All of them. Not clapping. Just standing. It wasn't loud. But it was the kind of silence that weighed more than thunder. That kind of silence says, "We see you." I swallowed hard. Nodded once. Someone guided me to a seat near the front. A folding chair with a red cushion, like that made it fancier. On the seat sat a small plaque. Rosalía Delgado, Field Medic, Bravo 3-2. There were over 200 people in that room. When Major Shah stepped up to the podium, he didn't bother with introductions. He just started reading the words from the commendation. During sustained enemy attack at Forward Operating Base Dagger in May of 2010, Specialist Delgado maintained composure under direct fire, performed triage, and facilitated the evacuation of 9 wounded Marines. Despite her own injuries from secondary ordnance, she administered aid while shielding another soldier from blast debris. Her actions directly resulted in 13 confirmed lives saved. I looked down at my hands while he spoke. Same hands. Scarred knuckles, half a fingernail missing from the left index. They still worked. Still poured coffee and wiped down booths. And yet, here they were, being honored like they'd written scripture in blood. After the commendation was read, Shaw stepped aside and motioned toward the stage. I shook my head, but he didn't push. He just smiled and said, "You don't need a mic. Your story already speaks." The rest of the event blurred at the edges. One by one, people came forward. A mother whose son had been wounded during the convoy blast. A fellow medic who'd found me unconscious beside a downed Humvee, tourniquet still fastened on someone else's leg. A corporal whose first words after waking in a Baghdad field hospital were apparently, "Did the lady with the scars make it?" They spoke quietly, with reverence. Some cried. Some laughed. I sat through it all, humble beyond anything I can explain. Near the end, an older man walked forward. Slender, cane in hand, dark tie against a pale shirt. I recognized his face before he spoke. Colonel Eric Lane. Retired now. He led our sector out in Anbar. A voice like gravel and a spine like a flagpole. "You won't remember me," he said into the mic, "but I remember you. You ran into the communication bunker during the shelling when everyone else was trying to get out. That building came down 3 minutes after you dragged me out. I know because I watched the roof cave in from a stretcher." He held something up, an eagle insignia, the kind worn on a colonel's lapel. "I kept this all these years. Figured it belonged to the bravest damn Marine I ever saw. It's yours now." He stepped off the stage and placed the eagle into my palm. Then he leaned close and whispered, "My daughter became a trauma nurse. Because of what I told her about you." That's when the tears came. I'd held them back all day. Through every hug, every thank you, every memory. But that broke me. Not because of what he gave me, but because it made me realize how far the ripples traveled. You think a moment is just a flash in time. A reaction. An instinct. But that moment becomes a story. And that story becomes someone's reason to try harder. To live. To give. To become something more. They ended the ceremony with a shadow box presentation. Inside was my old Purple Heart. I hadn't seen it in years. Left it behind in a cardboard box when I left the city and started over. Didn't feel like I deserved it. Not when others hadn't made it home. But this time, they handed it to me with care. With truth. The VFW commander said, You earned this not just through injury, but through integrity, because you never stopped serving, even after the battlefield changed. The applause this time wasn't silent. It came not with noise, but rhythm. The sound of challenge coins tapping wood tables, like rain falling on a drum. Military tradition, reserved for warriors. I walked out of that hall changed. Not new, exactly. Just more whole. I didn't think a room full of people could put the pieces back together. But maybe they didn't have to. Maybe I just needed to see that I wasn't invisible anymore. That night, as I sat on my porch drinking tea and watching the sun bleed over the trees, I opened the notebook again. One letter, written in scratchy cursive, stood out. Your scars are not warnings. They're proof that someone was brave enough to go into the fire and kind enough to carry someone else out. The next morning at Granger's felt like the breath after a storm. Calm, quiet, but something in the air had shifted. When I walked in, there was already a cup of coffee waiting at my station. No note, no fanfare, just poured the way I like it. Strong, a little sugar, splash of cream. I didn't ask who made it. Didn't need to. Every morning after that, the cup was there, waiting. That Monday, a small package showed up at the diner. My name written carefully across the top in block letters. Inside was a custom name tag. Rosalía Delgado, Bravo 3-2, with the Marine Corps emblem carved beside it. There was a note, and signed. Wear it if you choose, so no one mistakes your scars for weakness again. I pinned it to my apron. Later that day, the businessmen returned, the ones from earlier that week. The loud one approached, clearly uneasy. I came to apologize, he said. I judged you. Harshly. Without knowing anything. I nodded, letting him speak. I saw the news. The people lining up for you. I was wrong. I looked him in the eye. We all judge. What matters is what we learn afterward. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say more, but then just pressed his lips into a line. Each of the three men left a $100 bill under their plate. I picked them up and walked straight to the donation jar by the register marked Veteran Support Services. The bills slipped in with a satisfying hush. The jar had been nearly empty a week ago. Now, it was overflowing. Eleanor caught me doing it. You could have kept that, Rosie, she said. You earned it. I smiled at her. I have everything I need. But there are others still finding their way home. Later that week, I got a letter from Captain Shaw. Well, Major Shaw, but he never seemed to care much for titles. Marine Corps HQ wanted to include my story in their training material, leadership ethics, and core values. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. The request was formal, respectful. Your actions exemplify the highest traditions of the Marine Corps. I signed the consent form. Then I added a note at the bottom in my own handwriting. Tell them the scars are just geography. Maps showing where we've been, not limits on where we can go. 2 days later, a teacher came in for a slice of coconut cream pie and left a wooden box on the counter. Inside were letters from her students. She told them about me after seeing the news. One letter read, My dad has scars too, but now he doesn't feel alone. That one stayed in my apron pocket. Still does. By week's end, Granger's had become something else. Not just a diner, but a place people came to say thank you. Some left coins, others patches. One guy handed me a single bullet casing on a leather cord. I kept this from the day we met, he said. Reminds me I made it. He didn't stay for breakfast. I didn't ask his name. Not every story needs to be retold. Some of them just need to be honored. They started showing up every Tuesday. Same booth. Corner seat by the window. 4 or 5 young Marines in training from the nearby base. They came in uniform sometimes in civvies, but they always looked fresh. Not green exactly, just new. Like colts learning how to run on uneven ground. And I made sure they always had the best seat. Extra bacon. Full carafe of coffee at the table. Sometimes I'd sit with them during my break. They asked questions, real ones. Not about medals or war stories, but about fear. About how to lead when things went sideways. How to stay calm when your hands want to shake. One of them, a young woman, couldn't have been 20, asked how I got over the fear. I didn't, I told her. I just stopped letting it make decisions for me. She blinked. But weren't you brave? There's a difference between brave and fearless, I said. Fearless folks don't understand the danger. Brave folks do, and go anyway. She nodded like she understood. Like maybe she'd carry that with her one day. After a few weeks, their visits became routine. Nobody made a big deal out of it. But the regulars started calling that booth the cadet table, even though they weren't cadets. One Tuesday, a kid I hadn't seen before came in with the group. He was quiet. carried himself like someone who didn't want to be noticed. But before he left, he paused at the counter. "My uncle said you treated him in Fallujah," he said. "Told me to find you. Said I'd know you by the scars." I just nodded. He slipped a folded note onto the counter. Inside was a photo of me again, that same dusty image with my hands wrapped around a bandage. Written on the back, "She kept us going. She'll do the same for you." I kept that one too. That same afternoon, the principal of the local high school came by for a late lunch. He asked if I'd be willing to speak at an assembly about resilience. I said no, but I offered to teach first aid in the diner's back room instead. Low-key. Informal. The next weekend, 6 teenagers and a couple junior ROTC kids showed up. I taught them tourniquet basics, how to stop bleeding, how to keep someone calm while help's on the way. Knowledge weighs nothing, I told them. So carry as much of it as you can. Every chair was full. By month's end, we added another table. It wasn't just the diner anymore. Granger's had always been a quiet spot, truckers in the early hours, old-timers nursing bottomless coffees, but now it was a place people traveled to. From neighboring counties, other states, some just to shake my hand, some just to sit in the space that had somehow become sacred. Eleanor put up a sign near the register. "In this diner, we respect all scars seen and unseen." She didn't ask me first. She just did it. But I didn't mind. In fact, I added another below it, smaller, handwritten. "Scars mean you lived through something. Don't ever forget that." The sign started showing up elsewhere. The local VA clinic taped a copy near their intake window. The high school counselor hung it inside her office. Even the barbershop down the street stuck one in their front window. Word had gotten out. One morning, the city council announced they were renaming the street the diner sat on. Just a short stretch, 3 blocks. But they wanted to call it Delgado Way. I told them not to. Told them there were others more deserving. The mayor shook my hand anyway and said, "You carried more than your share. Let us carry your name." I didn't have an answer to that. The ceremony was held on Veterans Day. I stood near the back, hands in my pockets, trying not to draw attention. Mayor gave a speech. There was a small crowd, families, old soldiers, some of the kids from the diner's first aid classes. They asked if I wanted to say something. I almost didn't, but I saw the faces in the crowd and knew staying quiet would be selfish. I stepped up, cleared my throat, and said, "We all carry scars. Some are loud. Some are silent. Some you can see. Some we tuck behind our smiles. But the thing about scars, they mean you didn't quit. So if you're here, still standing, you've already won something." That was it. No fanfare. But afterward, a man who hadn't said a word all ceremony handed me his bronze star. "You deserve this more than I ever did," he said. I gave it back. Told him, "No one earns your story but you." He nodded and slipped it back into his pocket. Later that day, I sat outside on the diner's back steps with Eleanor. The sky was turning that fall kind of gold, and for once, everything felt still. "You ever think it'd turn into this?" she asked. I chuckled. "I was just trying to keep the coffee hot and the eggs right." She sipped her tea. Funny thing about quiet service, it echoes longer than most people ever notice. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Every year, on the anniversary of the mortar attack at FB Dagger, I take the day off. Doesn't matter if the grill's short-staffed or if there's a line out the door, I take that day. I drive about an hour west to the veteran cemetery. Nothing flashy. Just rows and rows of white markers, quiet as snowfall. I walk slowly, always to the same patch of ground. A row of headstones, all lined up like the formation we used to keep. I know the names by heart: Harvey, Bramble, Timmons, Lee. Good people. Funny, rough-edged, loudmouths, brothers. I leave a single white flower on each. "I remember you," I whisper to everyone. Sometimes I stay for a while. Sometimes I talk. Other times I just sit there, watching the wind move the flags and thinking how quiet war feels when it's over. I live for them. That's not poetic. It's just fact. Back at the diner, life keeps moving. The Tuesday Marines still come. The coffee still brews at 6 sharp. But now, once a month, there's a new tradition. Major Shaw, now retired, visits regularly. Always alone. Always orders black coffee. Always leaves behind a coin, tucked just under his saucer. A quiet thank you. A reminder. A thread between then and now. One day, he brought a letter from headquarters. Formal letterhead. Gold embossing. My name typed in all caps. They were finalizing an initiative, using stories of service, sacrifice, and leadership for new Marine training modules. And they wanted mine at the center of it. I didn't know how to feel. I'd spent so long trying to disappear, and now they wanted to teach me. Shaw watched me read the letter. They're not honoring you because you were perfect, he said. They're honoring you because you never stopped serving, even after you left the battlefield. I nodded, then signed the release. Later that week, another package arrived. Inside was a small handcrafted wooden box filled with more letters, this time from school children. Their teacher, a Marine vet himself, had shared my story during a lesson on courage. One note stood out, written in blue crayon on lined paper. Thank you for being brave when it was hard. My dad has scars too, but now he doesn't feel alone. That one went right into my apron pocket. Next to the napkin from O'Connor. Next to the folded photo. Next to the one with the flak jacket scrap. There's not a lot of space in that pocket anymore. But there's room for the things that matter. Life settled again, though it never went quite back to how it was. Granger's still smells like bacon by 6, and the tile behind the counter still squeaks near the syrup machine. But something's different now. Not louder, just fuller. Like the place holds more than people. Like it holds memory. People still come for pie or meatloaf, but some stay to read the letters framed on the walls, or to leave one of their own. Eleanor added a shelf near the register, a kind of living memorial. Coins, insignias, unit patches, even a couple folded flags. No one takes anything. Everyone understands. The sign is still up too. In this diner, we respect all scars. One quiet Thursday, a young Marine sat at the counter. Looked barely old enough to vote. He kept glancing my way but didn't say much, just drank his coffee and studied the challenge coins on the wall. Eventually he asked, "How'd you know you were ready to come back?" I didn't answer right away. Then I told him the truth. You don't. You just start showing up. And one day, you realize you've been back for a while. Even if the pieces don't all fit the same. He nodded slowly. Like that made sense to him. The kid left a photo behind. Him and 3 others. Young. Smiling. One of them wore a patch I recognized. Bravo 3-2. Another ripple. Some folks think healing comes all at once. Like a sunrise. But it's more like a series of matches in a dark hallway. You don't see far, but you keep moving, a little at a time. Eleanor retired not long ago. Sold the place to her niece, but made sure I stayed on as long as I wanted. Said the place needed its heartbeat. I stayed. Of course I did. Every now and then, someone walks in and stares at my name tag. You're that Rosalía? I always smile and say, I'm a Rosalía. The one who pours the coffee. That's all I ever wanted to be. But when I close up, and the lights dim down to soft orange, and the coffee pot stop percolating, I sometimes stand at the window and stare out onto Delgado Way. It still feels strange, seeing my name on a sign like that. But I'm starting to understand, it's not my name they honored. It's what it stood for. Quiet strength. Scars that don't ask permission to heal. The hands that stayed steady even when nothing else did. And on nights when the wind blows just right, I can almost hear the thrum of blades over sand, smell the smoke and heat. I remember their faces, their voices. And I whisper to the dark, I remember you. I still do. Because some stories aren't meant to fade. They're meant to be lived out. Quietly, kindly, steadily. Just like the coffee that starts pouring again every morning at 6 o'clock sharp.